Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Living Traditions 2026. Super exciting. I'm Aki Nakanishi. I'm co-CEO of Portland Japanese Garden, and I'll be your MC and moderator and everything else today. I'm really looking forward to get the ball rolling on this Living Traditions. We're going to be talking about water with some of the world's most astute minds working across architecture, art, and landscape architecture. Because as I think about the very genesis of this forum, actually, when the Prime Minister's office reached out to us pre-pandemic or during pandemic time, asking us how Japanese culture and tradition might be more widely shared across the world beyond those who are already committed and devoted to Japanese culture. And we kind of kept going back to the same notion. There are so many cultural phenomena and trends that are so compelling and have deep-rooted history and genesis in Japanese culture and tradition going back centuries, even if they show up in very different forms now. So by unraveling and discovering those so-called cultural reciprocity, if you like, between Japan and the West across space and time, not just about Japanese gardens, but also genres including music, animation, film, architecture, art, food, you name it. Living Traditions has been tracing the very journeys of some of the most iconic cultural forms through conversations with erudite scholars, experts, and practitioners from around the world. And we've been doing that since 2020. So it makes this year 6 year running. And no matter what we talked about in each of those past iterations, the curatorial vision and approach has been the same. What do I mean by that? We've always tried to explore this increasingly important notion in our society of living in harmony with nature, especially at the intersection of culture, art, and nature itself. Because at Poland Japanese Garden, we believe that gardens can be that powerful platform for civic discourse, just like the conversation we are having today. So thank you for gathering for this important conversation. And our collective deepest gratitude goes to the Prime Minister's Office, Japan, for making this all possible. We're very fortunate to have a representative person flying in from Tokyo just last night, actually, to oversee the entire session. No pressure. But gracing the program with her presence is Miss Naoko Kamiya, sitting right there. Thank you so very much for joining us. Such an honor to have you here with us. Thank you. We also have a friend from New York, from our partner organization, Japan Society in New York. Flying over from East Coast is Mr. Peter Tatara, sitting in the audience. Thank you so much. I want to just give you a quick overview of why we choose the topic, the theme of water. We chose it because of the multi-dimensional aspect, the quality of water, and the role it's been playing within the Japanese garden paradigm, if you like, as well as the garden around us as well. Needless to say, water is transformative. It shifts between vapor, liquid, and an ice, and of course, it sustains life. It nourishes the spirit. It also animates the landscape through sound, presence, and reflection as well. But of course, needless also to say that in its extreme forms, it can be deadly and profoundly destructive to human lives as well. In forms like obviously storms and tsunamis and floods, and they still remain central to some of the challenges that we face in terms of resiliency and climate adaptation. And that's why we brought luminary speakers from different parts of the world to talk about the common issue of water. Our first speaker is going to be covering what it means to us here in Portland by dissecting the garden that we have and also looking into the largest architectural project that the garden has ever undertaken, dissecting it to see the vision, how it came about, how the vision was actually built upon the actual concept of water management integration firmly in mind. Second presenter is going to be talking about, actually, he's going to be taking us all the way back to 1200 years ago to ancient Kyoto to see the inner workings of ancient landscape design as well as urban planning as well. The third speaker flying in from Paris is going to be sharing with us some of the most imaginative and creative use of water within environmental and architectural experience itself. So I am getting really excited. So this gives me a huge amount of pleasure introducing the first presenter. Some of you can't see me now, right? But I need to read this introductory text because he really deserves it. As a key collaborator with the globally acclaimed architect Kengo Kuma, Mr. Balázs Bognár played a leading role in Portland Japanese Garden's major architectural expansion in 2017, adding roughly 4 acres that continue to shape how we experience the garden today. When we imagine this forum, being on the theme of water that connect global ideas to the lived experience and reality of our place right here in Portland, we could not think of a better person to begin the conversation. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please do join me welcoming Mr. Balázs Bognár on stage.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Balázs Bognár, and it's good to be back home. I would like to thank, before I begin, I'd like to thank you, the audience, for being here this afternoon, the organizer and the hosts, to my colleagues who are about to join me here on stage, and to the Office of the Prime Minister, thank you for making this a possibility. Water has multiple dimensions: environmental, practical, sensory, psychological, and yes, spiritual. We know that the human body is 60% water. That makes us part of nature. Water is elemental in our experience of the everyday. Water gives life, and it gives way to the rarest material in the universe, which is wood. We also know that we architects don't literally build buildings out of water. And so for us, the practice is very much about how we respond to water and our relationships to it and with it. The surrounding environment is therefore first and foremost. I'd like to take a moment to talk a little bit about the mentality with which we work in the office. And as you can imagine, there's a kind of notion here, or the sensibility that we try to defer to the environment around us, the sites, the contexts, and so forth. This is one of our favorite photographs of architecture. I'm going to say that again. It's our favorite photograph of architecture. Well, guess what? There's almost nothing there that is architecture. It's only floor and roof. The rest is nature, and the rest is how we relate to that scene beyond us. And in this case, it's the famed moon viewing platform at Katsura Urikyu, the imperial villa, detached villa. Architecture is a frame through which we see the surrounding landscape. It's how we recognize contexts, our surroundings, and our understanding of our place in the cosmos. This framing helps us to tell shared stories and to remember and to think through together. By stepping the architecture back, it is our hope that we see more and gain deeper insights, not just about ourselves, but about each other. To give an example about some of the work that we tend to do, this is a museum, a canal museum, a museum about a canal in northern Japan. And as I had shown you in the previous slides, our effort is to minimize that architecture so that really what's on display is the water of the canal. The whole thing is submerged. It's a game of hide and go seek. The building is almost not there. In other work where some of these moves are a little bit more apparent, the architecture steps aside to allow for the site, which was already there, to take its shape. The museum here, this is a prefectural art museum in Nagasaki, Japan. It's in the southern large island of Kyushu. Here, the museum adapts to its conditions and allows for the very canal to pass through its territory. The canal is part of the museum, and that is, it puts the canal on display. And to experience the museum is to experience the water, and vice versa. I'm going to take this sense of harmonious approach to architecture a little bit closer to home, as Aki had mentioned. In the 16th century, the renowned tea master Sen no Rikyu had sort of 4 foundational tenets of the practice of tea: wa, kei, sei, jaku. which correspond to harmony, respect, purity, and tranquility. This indicates a mentality of presence and peace, and that is suffused through our experience of the Portland Japanese garden. It's also a lesser known underlying concept for the design, and this arose from very early conversations from the garden curator emeritus, my mentor, Sadafumi Uchiyama. A sense of this ceremony, quiet ceremony, flows throughout the gardens. And in this interpretation, a visitor can see the arrangement of the Portland Japanese garden as having been structured by these 4 principles of tea, even if it resides in our subconscious. With the emphasis of the garden, it's the emphasis placed on the garden and the life it receives from the water throughout. And so the garden is in focus, always. As you can see here in this photograph, Portland Japanese Garden Village underlines the notion that the garden has a house in it and not the other way around as in the Western paradigm. Let's take a look at the site plan of the Portland Japanese Garden, and I realize that the line work is a little bit light here, so I'm going to give you a couple of reference points just to keep you oriented. This is the entry and the ticketing pavilion as we have it today. Oops, pardon, it's a little bit too fast here. That is the flat garden and the main pavilion where we see a lot of the exhibitions. And this is the village at the top of the hill. I've colored in the areas of the water here so that you can get a sense of just how distributed and different character the water has taken on. These represent different textures, different shapes in the bodies of water, sounds, depths, and relationships to the immediate surroundings and between each other. Water changes character across the site, along the terrain, and is never the same from moment to moment. Water creates an undercurrent of continuity. And indeed, you're greeted by water at the very outset. It's immediately a sensory presence from the start of this journey, from bottom to top, with rippling light and burbling acoustics. And this changes with the weather, the time of day, seasons, and from year to year. And this is something that we wanted to have as a kind of an important theme that flows upward as the water comes down. And this continues to be seen and heard upon the ascent. Here in this image, we can trace our eye from the drip line down to the ground in a runnel of gravel, a pocket garden that emerges almost as though it's pushing its way through the cracks in the ground, and with a tea cafe in the distance. And we know that tea and water go hand in hand. In this photograph, we can understand the mix of sensory water, educational water, cultural and commercial water. You can follow the story of the water and its relationship to Portland's weather. Even when it's not raining, as here we have a rare moment of beautiful dappled sunlight in the courtyard, the vegetated upper roofs can be seen as the first line of catchment for this water, filtering the rain through its ceramic panels, recycled ceramic panels beneath the green, dripping from the lower roof, down through the gapped metal plates, falling to the ground. It's all lines of water and no gutters. Where does it go from there? Well, we're not allowed to let the water seep into the ground. The reason for that, it seems to disappear, but the reason why we allow the water to kind of slough off the side is that there's a historic landslide zone there, which basically meant that before the reservoir was filled, the site along an imaginary kind of conceptual slip line was moving at about a 1/16 of an inch to an 1/8 of an inch per year, which doesn't sound like a lot, but you add that up over decades and you realize the earth is moving. And that is made possible if the water is seeping into the ground. So what we've done is we've taken all those pavers in that courtyard and they're sand set to allow for a filtration of that water. This is why the buildings are placed the way they are, because they avoid this zone that is in concept moving. It's slow but steady slippage. And now, fortunately, the reservoir has been filled with a renewal project, and in concept anyway, the earth is now no longer moving. Water, in fact, is doing most of its work out of sight. Most of this work is underground, and many people are not really quite aware that we had to direct the water off the hill as soon as we possibly could, so it didn't seep into the ground and didn't affect or aggravate that tendency for the earth to move. And so it goes into the ground, into a sandset base, which filters the water, and then daylights into the beautiful bioswales and all these natural gardens, valley-like places, all with native vegetation, toward two vast cisterns underneath the parking lot. And again, those are not really normally romantic topics to discuss. Most people don't realize that the parking lot is in fact a functional covering for these cisterns. Those cisterns then release the water back into the city system in a measured and more manageable way. And so we did show the way in which water can be traced from the upper levels down to below, but there's also a sense that we're taking some of these systems out, some of the story out of view, so you can focus on the beauty and the tranquility of the site. And so it's beautiful, though it softens the utilitarian aspects into an aesthetic asset. It's also a significant part of a sustainable, dare I say, environmentally caring strategy. And that includes other features that bear at least a little bit of mention, but for example, 24 geothermal wells in the middle of the courtyard that'll again never really see the light of day, and several other features that are otherwise invisible or not easily viewed. But it's an important part of the story. There's a sense of a combination of practicality and poetry in the way that the water has been sort of woven throughout. And we intend for that. There's a sense of quietness, water that is seen, water that is not seen, so that you can focus on being present in the garden. And visitors rightly deserve that sense of calm and peace now more than ever. Well, as Aki alluded to, water is not always peaceful. Nature is impartial, doesn't really care about us, and takes on characteristics of all kinds. Water can be movingly peaceful, and it can be unfathomably violent. I'm going to place myself in context because I was a Midwestern kid in Tokyo on the day of March 11, 2011, when one of the strongest earthquakes in recorded history hit Japan. In the Tohoku region, that meant an magnitude 9 earthquake. It fizzled to 7.9 in Tokyo, and you can imagine I was scared for my life. This was a triple calamity, consisting of an earthquake, a tsunami, and the damage to the Fukushima nuclear reactor. Of these three, the earthquake was the least problematic. Of these three, the force of water was the most immediate and immediately reconfigured the land and completely rewrote the lives of many. These are communities in Tohoku whose lives are connected to the water. They're fishing villages. Their daily lives revolve around the tides, the cycles of life. Their livelihoods are tied to the shoreline. And you can see in this photograph, vast volumes of water had the effect of moving the shoreline and changing it. Those maps that happened beforehand were no longer accurate. For the fishing communities and their associated villages, the result was obviously devastating and forever. Let's take a look at a community called Minami Sanriku. It's one of these smaller fishing villages, and the aftermath is really difficult for one to wrap your mind around. I was sharing an anecdote earlier, and it bears repeating, in that when I was scared out of my mind in the relative safety of Tokyo, I was watching on live TV the wave from a footage of a helicopter, and the wave was sweeping at a ferocious rate, and there was a tiny micro van trying to outrace it, which basically implied I was watching somebody lose their life on screen. That still stays with me today. And part of the reason why I'm repeating some of this now is because there's a sense of respect that I am learning in the tradition of Japanese spatial traditions, relationships to nature, that is not innately peaceful for the sake of peace. It's that way because there's a healthy respect for the forces of nature. Let's take a look at this very briefly. That is the control tower from the Emergency Services Center that was already there in Minami Sanriku. This was the place that made the call, that made the forewarning that the tsunami is on its way before it was inundated. This circle here indicates the site, which I will talk about very briefly. But you can see here the entire township was washed over. And I would do well to point out in the foreground, it's difficult to see, but there is the remainder of a semi-oval loop of a running track. That was for a school. And that school acted as high ground for some people. And you can just imagine the implication there with both loss of life and the human spirit to survive. This is roughly what it looks like today. You can see it's a bit of a tabula rasa. It's empty. And it's a chance to start over despite the very difficult grounds on which they are compelled to sort of rebuild their lives. Regeneration is very difficult. To do it right takes time. It takes, forgive the phrase, it takes a village. And the reason why I'm mentioning that is it's not so much about the very projects that we try to do. There's a long-standing relationship that we at our office have with those regions because they were the ones to give our very first projects in 1990 and onward. They were the ones who volunteered their work to work through all kinds of material and crafts. When this happened, Kuma-san and a small delegation went up to Tohoku to see, are you all okay? You, the craftspeople who gave us life, we are wanting to make sure that we're there for you as well. So there's a whole suite of projects that began with this village. It's called Sansan Shopping, Minami Sanriku Sansan Shopping Village. And it sounds sort of commercial and trite, but in fact, what we're giving over is a community space. You can see a configuration of 6 very simple shed structures. And it's almost as though after the water was receding, some of the structures had sort of jostled apart and settled to create the space in between. And let's take a look at that very briefly here. It almost appears as though it's a street that runs through. It's a line, or it's lined on either side, and on both sides of all the structures by kind of a running pergola. It's almost a kind of series of front porches for the community. The architecture is simple. It's not bombastic. It has a resolute DIY aesthetic to it because indeed what happened was the design build process involved them at the start. It was their place, it was their conversation, and we were simply the vessels of their hopes. So here what you see on screen is a simple way to shed the water. We've got running gutters on either side, but the entire space underneath is a series of movable, simple furniture. It's been made by the community. It's a place for them to come together when they no longer had this place anymore. And here you can see that porch-like sense. When it is a little bit more bustling, it's shopping, it's cafes, it's restaurants, it's a place to exchange stories, it's a place to remember, it's to be with your neighbors, to share news. And so the space in between is functionally vague, but it's architecturally very specific. And I'll show you a little bit more about what that looks like here. It's covered on either side. The dimension is roughly about 10 to 12 feet, depending on the side you're on. Again, it's tuned a little bit with regard to the sun shading. Here, it's architects have a tendency to photograph things where there are no people, and I rue that, but you can see at least there's a sense of scale over through there. It's very low and long. There's a notion that you can crisscross across the space, see the vendor across the way, pick up the news, the next, fresh catch and so forth. Remember, this is a fishing village, and they love their relationship to the water, even after the disasters. By night, you can see it kind of come to life with a sense of warmth and glow. And again, the photographs are unfortunately a little bit devoid of activity, but you can see they've started to inhabit these structures in ways that we would have never really been to initially predict. So imagine their front porches for the community. It's a simple device, and it's theirs, and they have a place to go. I'm going to finish with 2 projects that take the metaphor of a bridge as a sense of repair. And I'm going to stay in the northern region of Tohoku. Again, the first one is going to be with Minami Sanriku, and we're going to take a look again at this very site. You see the configuration there in the center of the photograph. That's the village that I just discussed. Now tease your eye over to the right and you'll see a very low, kind of cambered, almost lenticular bridge. It's an islet that's been sort of flattened. That's a very important bridge that was destroyed, and it destroyed the link between the two sides of the river. Here you can see, because of the control of water, that channel is now much narrower. That bridge is an important link to a shrine on the one side, over to the emergency rescue services grounds that used to be there before the tsunami. And now, and I would do well to hat tip, but Miyagi sensei, who will be speaking after me, was the designer of the prayer, that's a kind of remembrance prayer park on the other side. There's a spiritual link between the two sides. And here you can see the village in the foreground and the bridge in the background. And you can see the way in which it becomes a major thoroughfare, and it's all pedestrian. It's about 250 feet long, 80 meters, something like that. And the whole thing is a means of not just walking across, but it's a communal space, and I'll show that to you in a moment. Here's a somewhat more romantic view of that bridge and bathed in afternoon light. And you can see immediately there are two surfaces, one that billows upward and the other one that bends downward. In another view, you can see this is a convergence of split paths coming together, creating a widening of the space. So people, it's no longer about incidental meetings, but you can spend time there. You can remember, trade stories, meet your neighbors. Underneath is a much more introspective sort of world. You get closer to the water. There's a sort of pain there. There's a communal pain there that needs that healing due to being close to the water. Water can be that symbol that is both paradoxically dangerous and life-giving. I'm showing you here just a detail of that bridge as it rests on the ground. There's this notion of these wooden posts coming all the way through. It's almost kind of a spiritual rhythm. It's the lighting system. It's a kind of an imbued integral structural strategy that's both wooden and steel. It's about warmth. It's about friendliness. It's about interaction. And again, the connectivity there leads us almost to the realm of the spirits, and here it's showing you the direction that it's towards the prayer park. Here there's almost a kind of ephemeral, spirit-like quality. And the last project I'd like to leave you with is not really the structure that's on screen here, but we do have another relationship with a brewery. This one now I'm taking to southern Japan. It's in Iwakuni, for those of you who are familiar. Sake's key ingredient of the three is water. It depends on a purity of water. The relationship of this famed sake company called Dasai, it sits on a river, and that's the river source from which they have their key main ingredient. The brewery itself sits on the other side, but the store and the tasting room are on the opposite side of the stream. In 2018, a devastating western flood came through and destroyed that link. Again, Kuma-san and the team decided to go down, and we talked to Sakurai-san, the owner of the brewery, and we said, how can we help? It became a symbol for the community to rebuild this bridge, rebuild the relationship between the two sides as an economic life stream. It was a simple act. What we did was we effectively reinforced the infrastructure with a kind of overlay of a wooden skeleton. And I'll show that to you. You can see these sweeping lines that are almost creature-like. It's alive, it's flowing. These wooden pieces have been all digitally calibrated, but they've been assembled by hand and hewn by hand. So there's a kind of alternating sense that the ideas are flowing from the human hand to the computer and back again. Here in this photograph that you can see on screen, there's the tasting room on the left and the brewery in that building over there on the opposite side. Here, in contrast, you can see it's about 4 inches by 4 inches of these cedar pieces, and the aging of the wood in the structure behind, and then the new bridge in the foreground. They're set almost in a cadence as though it's the same steps as that lady in the background with the umbrella. I will leave you with this slide because it's an emblem of not just beauty, of resilience of a particular community. It's this notion that we can be part of an effort to rebuild. We're talking about economic reconstruction, even if it's a small, localized way. We're rebuilding communities. Our relationships are friendships with those people who have been hurting and have been affected by particular forces in nature. So it's a notion of utility, beauty, and collaboration. This sense is probably our way forward. And that leads me to thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you so much, Balázs. I knew you were gonna just nail it, but yeah, you did. Oh my God. Thank you so much for that tour de force presentation. Situating our own garden as well in the kind of broader theme of water too. So yeah, just a perfect start of the forum actually, don't you think? We have an excellent speaker coming up as well. Our next presenter is Professor Shunsaku Miyagi, leading voice in the study of Japanese culture and landscaping traditions at the intersection of, I love this, antiquity and modernity. Teaching at University of Tokyo as well as Harvard GSD, Graduate School of Design, as you know, and while also leading his own practice across Japan. Professor Miyagi brings a rare ability to connect big historical forces with the lived reality of culture, society, and the built environment. In a forum centered on water, his lens really helps us take a step back and ask some of the most important questions, including what can Japan's experience, including its successes and its hard lessons, offer us as we confront the environmental challenges of our own moment. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives us a profound privilege to have Professor Miyagi join our conversation today. Please join me welcoming Professor Shunsaku Miyagi.
Well, thank you very much, Aki-san, for the overqualified, kind of introduction for me. Well, good afternoon, and it is my great pleasure and honor to participate in this significant event with such a, prominent figures in our professions, and also so many audiences coming to hear to share the kind of ideas and kind of resources for the interactions between the West and East. So today in my talk, I will focus on the presence of water in terms of garden inherency in landscape culture of Japan, namely in Kyoto, which has been at the epicenter of the garden culture of Japan, and it is my hometown as well. This picture scroll from early 13th century shows the house and garden of one upper-class aristocrat who lived in Kyoto at that time. The dark blue organically shaped band is a water stream in a garden. Gardens featuring flowing water or water surface were popular even back then. This reflects the aesthetic sense of the people of the time. And at the same time, it shows that there was a hydrological advantage, even in the city, to be able to easily obtain abundant water resources. Over 1,200 years from 9th century until present time, there has been a wide variety of garden styles developed in Kyoto. Direct influence from China on almost every aspect of society started diminishing at the end of 9th century. Then, art and culture of Japan gradually developed its own unique style, including architecture and garden, where a variety of styles have been developed afterward, by reflecting views of nature based on a religion, namely Buddhism and Shintoism. Throughout this process, presence of water and its form have been the most direct reflection of the view of nature. Currently, there is an exhibition on this theme of garden style at the Portland Japanese Gardens main structure. I think so far, so for anyone who are very much interested in that, I strongly recommend to take a look at. The oldest gardening manual in Japanese history, Sakuteiki, on the art of the garden design, was written in the late 11th or 12th century. This photo shows its oldest surviving copy and a couple of small excerpts from the shown on the right. Quote, contemplate the famous place of various regions, incorporate the charming elements of each place, make them your own, and then create a gentle pattern by softening its form. Depending on the topography and the shape of the pond, add your own touch to each of the areas that arise. And while considering the natural landscape, generate the form while imagining what it was like there. End quote. In this way, one of the most important design methods in traditional gardening of Japan was to make a visual quotation of nature and its landscape. And in any cases, the presence of water remains the central feature. These are the Katsura Imperial Villa in Kyoto, which is one of the masterpieces of Japan's historic gardens. On the left, the area covered by cobblestones in the foreground represent the landscape of a sandbar protruding into the ocean. On the right, it is a view of the coastal landscape seen from the base side of near the Osaka. These are the scene of the place that was also featured in several classic poetry in medieval time. The reason why this design method of visually referencing specific elements in natural landscape without scale references has become so widely applied is because of an aesthetic concept very quite unique to Japan. That is mitate. Mitate, and it will be very, quite difficult to find an English word to accurately convey the concept or meaning of mitate. But metaphoric representation would be one of the possible translations. It refers to the poetic act or the kind of mindset of seeing one thing as another by transforming natural figure and materials into symbolic representation. For instance, in a dry garden of Daisen in Daitokuji Temple, a pair of abstract sand cones may stand for the mountains or islands, white sand for ocean or flowing water. In Kyoto Imperial Palace on the right, the gentle slope paved with a small pebble stone clearly represent a beachscape in a coastal landscape. Through mitate, the garden becomes a microcosm of the universe, embodying the viewer's imagination to meaning of the scene. At the same time, this metaphorical representation of landscape is clearly reflected in how gardens are commonly referred to throughout history. Since the medieval age, there has been a custom in Japan to refer to garden as san-sui. San means the mountain or the vegetation that covers it, and sui literally means water itself. And the compound of these two characters, san-sui, is what a garden is all about. On the left, a famous Sansui painting of a statue from 16th century showed an imaginary landscape of mountain and water, and the waterfall under the stream of Murian in Kyoto Villa. Murian Villa in Kyoto on the right is nothing less than the metaphoric representation of an idealistic form of sansui. So, why did sansui, a compound word of the mountain and water, came to mean gardens? Let's take a slightly scientific look at the topography, geology, and hydrology briefly at this point. This map shows the geological land condition of Kyoto Basin. The area of the old capital, the prototype of today's capital, today's Kyoto, was defined at the end of 8th century, surrounded by mountains to the east, west, and north. Most of the area is located on a mid to low terrace of inland composite alluvial fan, developed by several rivers flowing out of mountains. It shows that there is an extremely diverse range of the land condition due to microtopography, and it greatly contribute to availability of water, so rich in quality and quantity. And the way the water appears on the ground has been so diverse that it surely has been reflected on its presence in many gardens as well. The abundance and the diversity found in the presence of water in Kyoto is supported by another element of sansui, which is geomorphological feature of mountains and the vegetation or green that covers them. In general theory of landscape perception, there are three levels of scale to be mentioned: major, medium, and minor. In the case of Kyoto, however, I believe there are intermediate scale between major and medium, and between medium and minor. And furthermore, there is a scale that allows you to feel as if you are touching, hearing, or smelling it, and that is micro. From top left to bottom right, you can see the landscape image is composed of the mountains or the green and water on 6 different scales. What I have been shown in previous slide will be formalized in a dialogue on this page. From top to bottom, 6 articulated stepwise scale of landscape composition will be identified from the scale of measure on top all the way down to micro. As a native of Kyoto, I have been believing my intuition that the landscape immersed in composition of mountain and water can be observed like this. From here, I'd like to introduce how I have interpreted the characteristic observed in the structure of landscape in Kyoto and tried to reflect those in some ways on the practice of the actual design project. Today, I have 2 projects, a recent project to show. This aerial photograph shows the area slightly northwest of the present-day city center of Kyoto. On the left of the center is Nijojo Castle, one of sub-17th World Heritage Site in Kyoto. To the east of that, in the area northeast of the old capital, were concentrated the large residence of the upper-class aristocrats at the time, and those are indicated in the yellow here, you can see. Geographically speaking, this area had relatively stable land conditions and abundant groundwater resources, which has idealistic location to develop a gorgeous garden with various water features. The site of the project I will introduce is about the northern quarter of Horikawa Inn, which was a residence of the one of Fujiwara clan that produced the several chief advisors to the emperor through 9th century up to the 11th century. After the regime change, political regime change from aristocracy to the samurai, the site was the headquarters of Mitsui family, who were a powerful and wealthy merchant at the time. Even after they moved to Tokyo in mid-19th century, the main residence of that family remained there. The plan showed the layout of the building and the gardens at the time, with the architectural style being typical shoin-zukuri or samurai residence, and the garden being in the style of storing around. This traditional house and garden were unfortunately demolished after the World War II due to dissolution of business conglomerate. Then, a new accommodation facility was built on this site by other developers. But fortunately enough, most stoneworks and stone materials from the original garden were reused in the new garden on the property. In 2014, Mitsui Real Estate Corporation, the original owner of the property, brought it back and undertook the project to revive it as another accommodation facility Then we are put in a charge of the overall design of the entire site and the landscape. And in the design process, the first thing we did actually, was to verify the originality of the stoneworks preserved and how they were used in the original garden of residence by carefully investigating plans and the photograph found in the archives. This is a ground floor plan of the facilities. We have proposed a complex staggered form of architectural wall line centered around a 1,600 square meter courtyard. The space on the ground floor are facing the courtyard, including reception, lobby, lounge, library, restaurant, and bath, are all public spaces. As you flow in the route from the drop-off through the reception and lobby lounge and walk around to the north or south, you can have a garden view from various angles and directions. The area indicated by red dashed line is presented actually a wall line. It represented the wall line of the existing underground structure of the previous building, which was reused for BOH and the other facilities to make construction period shorter. The reception lounge has glass door with a single span of 13.8 meter, quite wide, that can be completely opened facing the garden under good weather conditions. It creates the space in which the architecture and the garden are completely integrated. In this view, the presence of water or the flat water surface in the foreground, and also the tree on the right, which is a weeping cherry, and the group of trees behind it, altogether amplify the sense of depth of the courtyard, along with the continuous staggered architectural wall leading to the distant corner. Most of the water surface is set on top of the existing underground structure, so it is not possible to ensure the depth. So it is formed with the thin water film about a 10 millimeter thickness. This water film flows slowly from the front to the center of the garden along the 1% slope and creating gentle ripple of the water surface. As shown on the detailed cross section at the bottom, the water outlet is a slit about 5 millimeter wide, and this width and length create the ideal movement on the water surface. With a wide view span opening, the interior and garden are continuous and integrated in a cohesive space in which the water surface acts as a mediator. Right top is another water feature in the garden that is gently meandering stream running alongside the terrace. This flow recreates the atmosphere of the small stream flowing through the rustic vegetation in the field. Left bottom is a spring view of the garden from the other side of the courtyard through a small grove of maple trees. And right bottom is a scene in autumn, as you can imagine easily. The water resource of these features is all pumped up from the subsurface aquifer. And a sustainable water system has been developed in order that the overflow is gradually discharged into the permeable layer of soils underground during the recycling process on the site. Another project that I'd like to introduce today utilized the water system that was artificially constructed in the modern age as an urban infrastructure. Therefore, it was carried out in very different context from the previous one. This diagram shows the eastern part of the central Kyoto city. Here in this area, there has been a modern water system constructed about 130 years ago, and it is still in use today. It is Biwako Lake Canal Biwako Lake is the largest freshwater lake in Japan, sit next to Kyoto over low mountains in between. This canal was originally built for the hydroelectric power generations and water transportation. And although the power plant is still in operation, the water transportation ceased soon after its completion. Therefore, to make effective use of surplus water, several garden villas that would use this water as a landscape resources was proposed. The water flow indicated the light blue lines correspond to the waterway network to be focused in here. Diagram on the left shows that the numerous villas and their gardens currently located in this district. Those are indicated in red, as well as the water system on the canal in blue. On the right is it shows that the type of the water system network through which water from the canal is distributed to each garden villas. An extremely intricate network has been developed to fully utilize the limited amount of water resources. A garden villa located on the northern edge of the district was the target to be introduced here today. And what we have been trying to achieve is to reactivate the water system network, which has been dysfunctional for a long time, and to ensure the hydrological kind of soundness in a larger picture of urban fabric. In the process of design, we carefully focused on how the original garden had taken in the water from the canal. After examining the existing conditions of the water system, we conducted a series of restoration works and reactivated the entire system completely to get the full supply of water for the project site. The new design program is an accommodation facility, and this is a schematic plan of the garden. The original garden has a south and east-facing front. But by corresponding to a new architectural plan, the garden has been redesigned to have 4 or even 5 fronts all around. The original ground of the site had a height difference of about 1.5 meters, so we took advantage of that and proposed a water flow through the several steps from bottom to the top on this plan. This scheme makes full use of the amount of water introduced from the canal upstreams. The full garden space is composed of several organic and three-dimensional curvilinear bands covered by vegetation. All the stones shown here in this plan are reused for these in original garden. This is a computer-generated image, not AI. Okay, or the spring view from public space on the ground floor. From the backside of the garden to the front, soft and organically shaped green bands covered by the moss and grasses overlap one another, where a small cascade flowing down in various places. The planting were mainly tall deciduous trees with substantial clearance under the canopy. It is aiming to create the transparent view at eye level, while creating the shadowy effect of sunlight filtering through the tree canopy. Here is a summer image of the same view. Green and green of the tree is getting darker and thicker, and the contrast between strong summer sunlight and shadow of trees will become more remarkable. The sound of water flowing in here and there in the garden is expected to deliver a psychological effect of cooling the atmosphere. And then autumn comes. Many of the deciduous tree species are Japanese maple. So in the late autumn, the view will look like this, hopefully. The beauty of the color of maple red leaves is even more striking when it juxtaposed to its complementary color of green on the garden floor. In the winter, after deciduous trees have lost all their leaves, silhouette of the tree trunks and the branches stand out in the soft winter sunlight. In this way, things that changes with the seasons and time, and things do not change are intricately incorporated into the space of vertical and horizontal layer. What changes here are kind of appearance of the deciduous trees and the effect of the light and shadow. And what do not change are green of garden floor and the contrast and the constant flow of water. The water system network that connected to the Biwako Lake Canal has been incorporated into this garden throughout its history over 120 years. It is the gene of this garden. I believe that the multimodal perception of the physical environment, mostly through the visual and auditory sensibility, or even combined with the keen sense of temperature, humidity, and airflow, is the essence of a garden in Japan. In that sense, presence of water in various form and situation continues to be an essential and intrinsic medium of garden. Now, this project has been under construction and is supposed to have its grand opening in autumn of 2027. In concluding my talk today, I'd like to return to this diagram once again. Looking at the conceptual structure of landscape, which found in a stepwise scale in Kyoto, for example, I believe it will give a glimpse of ways to address the challenge that we all face in modern cities, no matter where it is. For instance, conservation of local landscape may concern upper whole scale. Water system, both surface and subsurface, will start from measure scale and stretch down to the bottom. Biodiversity will covered by all level of landscape scale, and so is for the keeping resilience against the disaster and the major environmental stresses. And even more importantly, how we can adapt to the climate change will be one of critical concerns covered by all scale of landscape. And I think that the concept of landscape infrastructure should be a fundamental framework to address challenge of all these kinds. Although what each single design project can contribute will be limited to the area of lower 4 levels of scale at most. Promoting local garden culture means giving its landscape infrastructure a clear and easily imaginable picture of environment and space for everybody in the region. And there will be a presence of water in the form of any kind, a surface of water, streams, springs, depots on the tree leaf, dew of the moss, even mist or fogs in the air, etc. We hope it will stimulate the sensitivity toward the nature of those who spend the time there, raise their threshold for capturing subtle change in the environment, and provide an opportunity to review our own lifestyle as well. I believe that it is what the designing garden is all about for today and for the near future. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking us on an incredible journey, genealogy of Japanese garden design principle, how you take stock of what's being carried throughout history, going back 1,200 years to the modern practice. I mean, there was so much done back, and I'm really looking forward to having a discussion later on. Our next and third speaker is Kathryn Gustafson, one of the most influential landscape architects of our time, and someone whose work has helped redefine what public landscapes can be. Throughout decades of practice on a truly international scale across Europe, the United States, and Asia, Kathryn has shown how water can be both an artistic medium as well as a civic force for sustainability. And what makes her perspective especially powerful for us today is the way she bridges disciplines. She bridges together art and engineering, ecology and elegance, memory and contemporary life, and she does so with a sensibility that resonates deeply with the ethos that we uphold through Living Traditions series. We're so honored to have her with us, flying in from Paris to Portland. Please join me welcoming Miss Kathryn Gustafson.
I'm from Yakima, Washington. I'm not from Asia. So Yakima has no water, right? And this is where I was raised, and I call this Campbell's soup. Just add water and it grows. You can see we're volcanic, that's Mount Adams, and without water, it doesn't exist. It is one of the most beautiful valleys in the world, and this is what I was raised with. Water is in a canal that is in concrete, and you can see the irrigation line, and if you don't have water, nothing grows. And if you fall in that canal, you get swept away, and so do your pets. So it was growing up as a child, you want to play in it, and there were some channels that had mud banks, but it was your life force. So as the valley changed, what has happened in Yakima, as you all know from this part of the world, is that we discovered wine. And it takes less water, and it also has grown our agricultural to an immense amount. And it's an absolutely gorgeous, beautiful valley. When I first started, I've been doing this for 46 years. And my first project was stormwater management. And it was to drain the fields around it so that the farmers in France could actually start getting their fields prepared and keep it from flooding. And it was my absolute first project. I went from fashion to landscape architecture because I wanted it to be an art form. And so sculpture and sculpting the earth became part of it. And through that, I learned to understand plants, understand water, understand sustainability, understand engineering. And it has carried me through a marvelous journey to this day. This is another project, one of the very early projects, which is at Plaza, is trying to explore how does water become something that is part of your infrastructure and also part of your play. So you see here for the first time in 1990, I put jets on pavement so kids could play safely. I put a water barrier in front as a guardrail, and so it's reflecting the town hall. How do you change water to become part of your artistic composition, but also part of the life? This is Terrasson in 1995. Terrasson in French means land of sound. And so because of that, there was water everywhere, and guiding that water across entire hillsides to create different impacts, different parts to visit, became signature about how you use water, how do you cross water, how does it become part of the public realm. The water scrim is the American Museum of Natural History in New York, Ross Terrace. It's the first time I used 3 millimeters of water. And again, jets on pavement, scrims on water. And at night, what happens as you saw in your project, is that it took the planetarium and reflected the entire planetarium on the water. And so it became a night scene and a day scene. In the day, when the planetarium and their shadow, it becomes reflective. As soon as it's sun, that sun goes through and you see the pavement. So it's constantly transforming the space. You can also just empty it out and have a place to have activities in. And so getting the spaces, the landscapes to be sculpture-like, but also transforming constantly according to use. This is South Coast Plaza in California, where I started to experiment with air in water. And how do you bring air into water? And it is how to vitalize water. And it's something that hot springs, we know from living in the Cascades, and that things that move underground come through the rocks, come through. And that's trying to bring that into our modern world, and the sound of it and the contemplation where you sit on a bench and you just listen to the water as it moves. So those are where I started, and it's just continued. I only do public realm, and I was educated in France, in Versailles, the École Nationale Supérieure de Versailles. And in France, 86% of the budget is public. So if you're going to work, you do public realm. And it's changed now, obviously, but I have loved doing public realm all my life. And this is an example of Valencia. It's just this amazing place, and it's like what's happened to all our cities is that the train came in to the center, and then the city builds around it, right? And building around it, it cuts off the neighborhoods. And so you can see it happening everywhere, whether it's in Paris, it's in, Lyon, and all of a sudden you have this huge infrastructure in the middle of your city, and all your neighborhoods can't connect. And so what everybody is doing, and working on a number of projects, we're putting the rails underground, reconnecting the neighborhoods. And this one had the vision to say, we're going to make it a park. So looking at the park, looking at this place, and the other thing about designing for the public, it's their place, it's not your place, and trying to figure out where they are and what they live and what is essence to them. And in this part of Valencia, the Moors were there in the 12th century. And in it, they brought irrigation, and they brought water from the mountains into all the fields. And it's the food basket of all of Europe. And this water channels go through, and they're called the huertas where all the food is grown. And it is from Yulas is where all the water filters through. And there's this amazing, and I'm not sure I know how to, so does this work? Yeah, probably not. Oh, here it is. Okay, see this big water body? That is a reservoir. It's pure, sweet water right next to the ocean. And that is what feeds all of this. And all the water comes through the canals and feeds in there. So I wanted to design a park that was about water and about the place. And the first thing I discovered is my site was a bowl. And then I went to the museum, and all the museum did was show you more bowls people ate out of. And so it was a place of bowls and eating and food and water, and these farms that were the places where all the crops went, and then they were distributed. So we did a park of bowls, and those bowls had lines. And this is the Eula, and the Eula here, see if I get this right. I'm not very good at doing this. See the lower image there? That's a sand base where all the water goes through, gets filtered through, and it goes into the aquifer underneath. And from that, the first concept is creating a park that when you enter it, you never see through it, you see in it. And you enter by water. So you're taking your historical land and the movement through it and transferring it. Now, the turquoise water is natural water, and the darker water is cultural water. And so what you're seeing in the image is the natural water being filtered through from all the uses and coming back through the sand base back into the aquifer. And the cultural water is the water of play and interaction between different parts of your society. So this is my land sculpture. Obviously, using the different levels of land creates those bowls, and in those bowls are different activities. And so there is a huerta that shows how food was originally grown. There's a children's area for play. There's the whole central axis through it. There's amphitheaters. There's a garden for the blind. There is a urban center that shows how you grow food when you're in a urban center without a lot of sun and a lot of water and balconies, and so how it becomes part of the learning. So this is just showing that these are historical buildings in the center that were part of the trains that are into an art center now. And this is entering into one of the places you enter with the water, and then the water becomes playful. All the way through this park, water is everywhere because that is what Valencia is. And this is the romantic valley between two of the bowls. Obviously, I planted it in pink. All the water is non-treated. It is coming through naturally. There is no chlorine. Everything is done by natural filtration. This is the huerta where people learn how to grow food and what are the traditional ways food was grown. This is the romantic valley. Notice on either side, those two high points, those are 8 meters up to create the bowls. And at the end is the original farmhouse that was on the land, and that has been restored and become a museum about the land. And one of the ways to build up those walls are these. And I am so tired of green walls that take too much environment. I wanted a wall where the rain would come and filter through every piece of it, so all the roots of all the plants are like in a normal landscape, and try to find a way that it becomes this very vibrant, changing piece. And so there's a north side and the south side. And they become the ramps that get you handicap up to that 8 meters so you can see through all the bowls. And so having your universal handicap access for your public. And sometimes they're just all white and sometimes they're red and they change with the season. So, and it's important that the flowers and colors are part of Valencia because that's what they grow, and also finding places where different people feel comfortable just sitting there and just being quiet. And again, the Arts Center was a big industrial building that created a big plaza next to it. And that plaza can be a scrim of water. It can be water that changes and creates patterns. It can be play and sound. It can have kids, or it can be the magic of night with different lighting and different points. So that's Valencia. Hong Kong. Yeah, I travel a bit. And I like it. So Hong Kong is like one of my favorite places in the world because it has this rock, and at the and that rock is protected. You can't build all the way up it. It would just be an environmental disaster, and water's constantly coming down the rock. And what's great about Hong Kong is you can stay in a hotel 5 minutes away, turn your back to the water, go up the hill, and you're hiking. It's just one of the most greatest places to be healthy in. And nobody ever tells you that about Hong Kong, right? But it has this man and nature dynamic that is just amazing. My client, Swires Properties, had these 3 buildings that are red. And what is transformed below is that, see if I can make this thing work. Yeah. So that's what was there. And we've redone all of this, the streets, but these 2 buildings, all these left, were demolished, and they created 2 high-rise buildings, and this is the size of a football field. It's the biggest landscape in Hong Kong that isn't part of the public gardens that were created at, turn of the century. So it's a big deal for developers to say, yes, we can give back to the community. we can create gardens. And so that's Taiku Plaza. And then all of this, we've landscaped all this in Taiku Gardens. We've redone Tongchu Street here. We've redone this area. And it's become a totally different type of place. This happened in 2016 during the yellow umbrellas. And that's the transition of China taking over Hong Kong and or absorbing Hong Kong more generally. And it's a time in a culture that is so important that that transition passes calmly and respectfully, and that it has different phases of it. So it's a transition. You need some transparency for that to happen, and you need it to be respecting of tradition. So those three things, trying to look at that tradition and look at the mountains and the water and how the veils of things happen in this society, that became the concept to have, okay, we got to do this transition. We can't lose our tradition, but we have to have transparency about what we're doing. And so that led to this concept of veils of transparency. And what we discovered on the site is with all these high towers, right in the middle of the site, there was sunshine, there was hope, there is future. And so the center of that site we put water, because that is going to reflect light and throw it back into the environment. And also there was one point on the site that had a 5-meter height higher, which was much bigger than that. And it all goes down to 3 points. So it's like this, and that's what you see in this section, that you're sitting up and everything flows down. And everything flows down in a natural way. This is the site that Swires had before. It's a landfill, and it was docks that actually delivered sugar. And they've been there for a very, very long time. This is my clay model that looks at redoing those docks. And instead of having ships in the water, it's water where the ships were. And so it's transforming things of what historically where they were into where they are today. And this is my first sketch of how do you do the veils with water, and then how do you have that discovery of water and of going through that veil to the next point. So you can see from the model, you have the upper right-hand corner is the high point, and every time you move through a line, you drop down another 2 meters, and then you drop down another 2 meters. So you're always going into a new place of discovery. This is what it looks like today. It's built. It only took us 10 years. That's pretty good for 2 buildings, underground parking, park. You know, it's a lot in the middle of Hong Kong. There is a bridge that connects all the buildings that is by Hugh Dotton Architects from France, and that connects at the first floor. And you can see the bands of water, and notice where the sun is, right in the center. And so that is the bright point. That is your hope. That is your future. And trying to understand how you move through time and through pieces. The other thing that is that every line is a different, there's 2 different colors. There's brown that's earth, and there's white that's light. And so those bands are what structured the entire space. And you can see the first 2 pools here. There's the long pool and the oval pool. And each one of them is white and with white granite. Everything else is brown granite. That is the earth. And that brown granite comes from Canada and the east coast, northeast coast of Canada. Biodiversity was hugely important. and trying to find a way to really get this immersive, that you're in a place. And so worked very hard with local landscape architects. Here you can see the brown line coming through, and even when you have a water fountain in the brown line, it is brown. And so that consistency gives you structure of moving through the veils. This is the long pool. It's 76 meters long. It has a grade change of 5 meters down. And working with what were the streams in the mountains, what were the different textures. We've textured all the granite to have the water make sound and move through it. And there's this wonderful relationship between the walkway and the seating along the long pool, where people see into the garden and you watch people also walking around. And having air come up to start the water in the long pool, very much like the first water I did in South Coast Plaza many years before, but also using air. And that water overflows into the next pool. So all the water circuits are all connected. And then sometimes you get people that are going, how did they do this, you know? And so we have been working on CNC cutting of stone since the Diana Memorial in 2004. And so you take a pattern. This is Joseph Albert's. I like it because it goes from big to small. And this is where we wanted to get that transition, still transition, transparency. It keeps repeating. And all the stone is carved, and it's carved by CNC machines. It's all computerized. And it's just a wonderful way to work and have surprise within your site. And so here you can see the oval pool in its bathing in its sunshine with its vegetation. Here is the brown pool, which is actually like a shawl of a woman, that you'll see how the water flows on it. But it's this quiet place that is between things. And so it's a discovery of intimacy. This, you can see the brown lines come in, and what we've done is we've done all the interiors of the buildings, and we pulled all those colors and textures into the buildings. Neil Porter, my partner, is an architect, so is Mary Bowman. So bringing all that landscape into the building, and also on the second building, pulling it back out into Taiku Gardens and having the water become, again, something that pulls you outside, right? And pulls you into the landscape. And this is another brown water feature with the brown granite. And see how people sit on the back wall. They have trees in front of them. They have water in front of them. So it's like they're in their separate world from the building itself. And the thing I like about when I was designing this is I wanted a water feature where I could walk through the jets and never get wet, and where children could play, because this is a neighborhood with lots of apartment blocks behind it. And you can see these through this jet, where that red wall is part of apartment blocks behind. Our big gain on this is biodiversity. We worked really hard at this, right? We actually built a nursery from feng shui forests. And so all the different plants that we couldn't get in nurseries, we created our own nursery that brought in the type of native vegetation that we didn't have before. We couldn't buy it, we couldn't get it, so we grew it. And it worries. Lighting, we kept it really low, we kept it down. We brought in all the right fruits for the biodiversity, and this is what I'm very proud of. See that 200 in the center? That's the number of species we had within 1.5 years. All the other sites around us are over 7 years to 10 years old, and that's all they have. So our birds have food, we have butterflies, and they have camouflage. We made sure that their colors matched our vegetation so that they'd feel safe nesting there. And then the kids, they get all the education, they learn about how it works, they have their papers, they get to identify things, and then they get to have this fabulous piece. So then just the last one, because I know we're over and I know people would probably want to take a break or not, but this is Osaka and Japan. This is Imperial Palace in Tokyo, where the first time I got there, I said, oh my God, these people know how to do stone. It's like, oh God, it's so amazing. And then you get to Osaka, that's like, it's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And I was like, and then you go outside, everybody's so nice and they're so pleasant. They have outdoor picnics, and then they have streets with color and things. And it's just this vibrant place with tons of water around it. It's like floating, Osaka. And so this is the site that is Yumika, Grand Green, and it's a huge development on either ends with a 7-hectare park in the center, cut through by a road. This is what the site looked like my first day of visiting. I'm going, oh God, this could be fun. And it has been fun. This, I'm going to go really quick because I know we have more things to do, but this is a basic plan. We have a road that cuts through it and created 2 different areas. One on the left, which is more the, it's the public gathering, it's entertainment, it's being together, it's events. And on the other, it's much more planted, bucolic, much more private in it. Here you'll see over the top that the events is on one side. There is the new train station is right here along the road. We put all the rails underground again. And then over on the other side, Tadawando has a museum there. And see that big oval curve? That is a 6-meter tall wall that connects with his museum, but creates this amazing wall that faces the west. When the sun sets in the west, it's down the center of that water feature that you see from the top. So there's all this sighting that goes on about how to live it. The city would not let us stop the road, so we built a bridge over the top of the road and then made amphitheater steps so the road could be closed on the weekend and have events on it. And so these are CGIs showing it during the blossom time. This is the experience on the bridge, the pathway, upper pathway, or down below the upper pathway. This is CGI again. That means computer-aided design. It means that it's not real, but it's in our imagination, and it will be real. So you can see how people gather and sit. This is my clay model of that area to try to figure out how the landform and all the pieces work together. This is the built. That's our bridge, the upper bridge. You can see the 3 events domes by Sana, who are Japanese architects in Tokyo, and the bridge coming over the top. I just have to say one thing, took us 3 years to allow us not to do a bridge that was perpendicular to the road, but a diagonal, because that's not the rules in Japan. But we got there after 3 years, and we have a diagonal bridge, and it connects much better from top to bottom. And you can see at the bottom that zigzag there, that's a handicap bridge up to Tadawando's second deck of that building. And then all the native vegetation brought in and horticulture vegetation. This shows the terraces along the road, and this shows the harmony between Santa and ourselves, creating one place, and with the water feature. And this shows how all the curves and the forms, it's an art form. And then people come and it becomes a public realm. And you can see how not deep it is. Okay, you can see people's ankles. The water doesn't get over that, so it's super safe for kids. And this is the future that we're still building. And remember that this is the water feature we're still working on. And that is that stepped stone wall that goes through. And actually, the woman that's there is sitting over there, Make-san. And so also there, when you exit in an emergency from the Tado Ando building, you end up behind a waterfall, which is the waterfall of that wall. And that is still under construction now. And so it's a great place. It's fun. And I'm still waiting to finish the rest. So I think I should stop. I have one more project that will take about 5 minutes. Well, where's my boss? I go? Okay. It's only like 4 more slides. It's just about how to transform something for drought and sustainability. This is our gallery in New South Wales and Australia and Sydney. The thing that happened with that gallery is Sana won the competition to do the new contemporary building for Aboriginal art. And that's all those squares. But the mother house, so it's sort of like, oh God, I'm going to have a new sister that's younger and prettier than me, and I'm going to be sitting there looking like the old horse sitting there. And so I said, okay, Kai, you've got to do something to the front of the old museum because it's really going to be awful. And so, and it would have been because Santa did a beautiful job, of course. And here we've got, we put in new vegetation, it's got solid glass, it's absolutely beautiful. And then said, okay, what do we do with the front of the building of this building? And the big problem from the park across the way, we had no handicap access. So first thing, how do you get a handicap access in here? Then we have the problem that all of my public works have is the bomber trucks, right? And that how do you stop, a 5-ton truck full of explosives from going right into your facade? So all these things that are against here, all of this is trying to stop. These are bollards. These are foundations built down. I can't even tell you how deep. They will stop a truck. All of this will stop a truck. All of this. So you have to make it look like it really isn't there. And like it really doesn't, it isn't like you're in a barrier. So those 2 water features are 20 meters long, 5 meters wide. And they actually reflect the building. And so the old ugly sister became brand new and beautiful, and she has her own thing, and she, and beautiful black granite, and all the writing on the exterior walls, and the statues are all black against this wonderful beige, and it all works great. So then somebody says, well, okay, you want to put a water feature out there, but what happens when we have a drought? I said, oh God. Okay, so they have to stop trucks, right? So I did an argyle. And the argyle is a pattern that you have English and you have a land of First People, and that the diagonals of within the art are absolutely amazing. And so I wanted to find something that would talk to both everybody on the land. And so it's a 3-dimensional that is polished black granite. So when you don't have water, it reflects the sky and it becomes a sculpture. And so that is with our trees, the new palm trees we planted, everything is reflected in it. And so that's what we have for Sydney. And that's the end.
Yeah, so many things to unpack, but I just wanted, just curious to see how these very different perspectives converge and tell us a collective story, actually. And I would definitely encourage you all to ask each other questions to, put more organic touch to the conversation we're going to be having here for the next, say, 15 minutes or so. But to put more structure in the conversation, I might just ask you, Balázs, the first question to, get us going, shall I? Yeah, your design philosophy, after seeing the presentation, seems to really emphasize, let natural elements take the center stage kind of approach. How do you think that approach really makes or impacts how people actually interact with nature? How conscious are you about every architectural project as you go into those meeting rooms?
Very conscious. the one of the first things in conversation in the practice that we do is we ask ourselves, well, the first question any architect should ask themselves is not what should I design, but should I design? And there's also this kind of weirdly forced dichotomy that we say mankind and nature. But we are part of nature. And so for us, what we try to do is, as I mentioned in commentary earlier, is that when we step back the presence of the architecture, and we remind ourselves it's not just about the built stuff that we do, but we try to foster life. We try to allow for a place for people to be, to come together, experience these gorgeous landscapes and so forth. What we're really trying to do is to kind of create a bracket for life. It's open-ended. And then really what that means is that it's kind of a beautiful backdrop in a way.
Thank you so much. Yeah. The way you put everything in perspective was so articulate and poetic, and I just loved listening to you. So thank you. I just wanted to say that. Professor Miyagi,
Yes.
over to you. I don't think many of us here actually are not aware of the fact that you are the current custodian of one of the World Cultural Heritage Sites in Japan, one of the oldest temples, which is pictured right here in Kyoto. And you know one or two things about the effects of water in this close to 1,000-year-old building that was built 1052, if I get it right?
Yeah, 3 actually.
1053. So I think I was close enough there.
That's fine.
Everything is up to code. No. I just wondered at the cross section of what I said, the antiquity and modernity. I wonder what being brought up right behind this building actually provided you with as a landscape architect dealing with all these natural elements.
Well, actually, I was born in the house right behind this, hall, and grew up in there, which means that every morning when I was in the grade school, from the 6 years old and up until the 12, every morning my parents asked me to do some kind of cleaning up the pathway to the main hall. It takes like 20 minutes. And after 5:30 is the time the gate of the temple closed. The temple ground became my playground. I mean, the early in the morning and the twilight time, it's a kind of changing light and shadow creates a quite a bit of appeal of the space, and the presence of this flat, very calm water reflecting those kind of light and shadows. Well, it gives us a very sensitive moment for me to experience, of course. And I think in that terms, I really think it is quite important to provide this kind of situation in some public spaces or other, even some private places, whatever. I think it will raise your threshold to capture the very, very subtle change of the light and shadows, and also some kind of a movement of the airs, creating some of the very, very subtle ripple on the surface. And so that kind of things will be very quite important too. So that's kind of things these days I'm very much interested in and try to create or recreate in some things. So
I'm definitely beginning to hear this shared language, beginning to emerge here. Because, Kathryn, you are also alluding to a lot of those natural qualities, either embodied by, reflected by, or enhanced by water, presence of water in your project. I just wonder, when we go back to the original forum title of water as metaphor, I think did it resonate with you? The term water as a metaphor. I just wonder what water has meant to you. You have walked us through your kind of childhood home state of Washington, irrigation, water as absolute necessity, being elevated to something that makes everything beautiful, effective. I just wonder how water has come to mean so much to you.
I think that the thing that water does, especially when, as you just spoke about, there are so many different moods. And those moods, whether it's violence, or dapple blight or rushing, it actually makes people more receptive to emotions because it opens them up by the wonderment of it. And so I think it actually enhances our humanity for other people because it's sort of like this physical thing. It opens up all your pores and everything about you and everything you're feeling. And so I think it makes you a kinder person or possibly, it makes you more receptive to other things. And so once you're more receptive to other things, that is positive, as long as you're receptive to the positive things, which is not always happening in this country. But but water does make you more receptive.
Well, that is profound. That also speaks to what Balázs, you alluded to in your presentation too. You talked about a communal pride too. I wonder how revealing. Oh, by the way, as a side note, I do think the underground water system up at our garden really should be part of our education kind of program, don't you think? I think everyone should know about what's actually underneath what we are walking every day, each and every day. What do you think revealing the water unseen to the owners, to the community members would actually do to their sense of community pride?
Wow, that's a difficult, complicated question. Let me start with the easier part, which is to say that it's a great talking point to help understand the story. One thing that I really liked about what you said, Kathryn, is that there's almost a sense of immediate awe when we come in contact with water, with its different moods. It's a very easy thing for people to have that almost immediacy. It's a part of our humanity. Now, when you reveal those, for me, it was a surprising part of even the design process that we were working together with the landscape architects to say that, listen, the strategy is we're taking the water off the site, we're going to filter it out, clean it, and we're going to show it as these beautiful gardens. People experience them as gardens, but in reality, they're workhorses to clean the water, which then releases them from those cisterns back into the city. The reason why I find that approach to be important, and by the way, that's the byproduct of an entire team brainstorming all this complex stuff. But that's important because we have to understand that fresh water is a pretty limited resource.
Yeah.
And it's important for us to be stewards of the only planet that we have. So, when you realize that there's scarcity and the consciousness of how we use the water in a particular way, when you see it both beautiful and it's also working in a particular way, that becomes a really meaningful layer of the experience when you, for example, when you go to a garden.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Professor Miyagi, or I should call you Shun-san.
Sure. Yeah.
Shun. Yeah, I wonder, coming into the United States to teach these next generation of architects and landscape architects, what are some of the immediate things that you would try to impart them, as you try to foster the next generation of thinkers and, visionaries? I just wonder what you try to take from your experience in Japan to share with American students and undergrad, postgrad.
Well, it's really tough question because usually I have some design kind of problem to put in the students kind of work. I usually not tell them not to be to stick to the some of the kind of um they are kind of preoccupied ideas of the what they should be or how they should be treated or designed. But at the same time, I really like to enhance them to be very honest to what's happening over there on the site actually. And these days, I mean, when I was a student back in 1980s, a technology to get some information about the site or environment or whatever is very limited. But these days, there is so much, technology, and we can apply for the understanding the site or something like that. So I think being a very vacant at the starting point to tackle the design issue of the specific site, I think being a very vacant and apply those kind of technology to find out the then you can put your ideas on something like that. So on specific ideas or specific kind of value system to be deployed on that design solutions. But in that time, I think Japanese kind of tradition will be, I don't know, it's really tough to tell, but I still believe that kind of, as I said, the sensitivity to the nature would be the one point. Because on the one side, there is a very, very objective way to understand the environment or context and everything. But the other side would be, very, very intuitive, first of all, and subjective probably. And but that part will be reflected on their ideas based on their own experience in the past. And because we have so many foreign students in that GSD right now. For example, last year we had like 11 students from my studio. I think 7 of them are from foreign countries. So having so much different backgrounds. So, but I'm very much interested in how they are interested in how to express their idea in the completely different context of Japan, because I have the side of the project in Japan. So that's kind of thing. So I trying not to insist too much about some kind of Japanese tradition or whatever. So even I really like to see how they are gonna react to that kind of context and so on.
They bring their own culture. Yeah.
Thank you, Shun-san. Yeah, the way you deconstructed the sort of very esoteric, Japanese design principles and philosophies, the way you did that earlier actually enabled me to connect some of those points back to what, Kathryn talked about too, biodiversity, for example, climate adaptation, and, beautification of the place through use of natural elements, It was basically, that's why I said there seems to be some sort of shared language emerging here.
Yeah.
To the same extent though, as someone who's being raised in that specific environment, embracing tradition but also looking for innovation type of posture, I wonder again, Kathryn, you've worked with so many different historical places where you have to harness and respect, pay respect to what has been before you, but also to try to innovate the space or upgrade the space. I wonder if there have been any specific examples that you can turn to share with us, where you had to preserve historic parts of something to create something new experientially or aesthetically.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I could pull up an image, but the National Portrait Gallery in Washington, D.C.,
Do you have that? Can we pull that up? National Portrait Gallery.
Yeah, I think just, yeah, you can probably just hit that.
I think we should see.
The National Portrait Gallery in DC, it is DC's oldest museum, by the way, and it used to be a post office. And the staircases through this thing have steps only this big, so the horses could go up the stairs. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. And so when I got there, they wanted to have a courtyard, and what happened before is that there was an outdoor courtyard that existed. And these are public buildings. Everything Smithsonian is free, right? So you walk through the museums, you come in from one street, you go through the courtyard, go through another street. You may not go up in the museum. It's part of being part of DC, right? And that's what I love about DC. You know, there's no barriers and things like that. You just move. Of course, it's that we're not going there, okay? So what happened here is this building has two facades. It has this beautiful, soft limestone facade in the exterior, and then on the interior is gray granite, right? And it's because that was the service thing, or it was a different type of then presenting to the outside of what Washington, D.C. Fosters and Partners had been commissioned to change that courtyard to an internal courtyard for events. And so they had put up this ceiling with glass. And when I got there, we're testing this huge digital billboard at the end in this space to have events. And I just kind of freaked out. I said, wait a minute, this is a historical building. You can't put that piece of crap in here. I mean, it's just like that. If you want to have a screen, you drop it down from the ceiling and then it goes back up and then disappears, right? But you don't have it as a permanent piece in the middle of this space. I won. So then they said, okay, we want to sit 1,000 people. Good. Okay. And then you've got to be able to set this up by 6, cocktails at 6. The museum closes at 5. And so logistically, you've got to get all those tables, all the catering things. We spent months planning this thing. And at the same time, it has to be a place where when you're not having events, it's not a piece of concrete and stone and water, so we need water, we need trees. It used to be a courtyard. You have memory. You have a memory of people going there for lunch in that courtyard because it's free. So they get their sandwich at the place, the deli next door. They go to the courtyard, and it still works that way. And so it needs to work that way because that is what its history is. And so looking at how do we create water in there? And then how do we get rid of the water when we have 1,000 people? And then how do you set up? So basically, these are scrims of water that are 5 millimeters. They move across. You hear the water drop through a metal grill, catches. You hear the sound of water that's moving. And you have 3 panels. So the main access through, you can see it's there. It's not symmetric, this building, okay? So it's a 1/3, 2/3 kind of thing. So people move through there. So at 4 o'clock, we block off 2 of the water features and turn them off and put up a temporary gate fence. And the caterers start setting up there. They have an elevator that comes up separately from that side. All their tools come in, everything comes in. Public still going back and forth. They still have a water feature. They still have trees, please. Then 5 o'clock goes, doors shut. That comes down. All the other catering comes in. 6 o'clock, we're open for biz. Okay. Yeah. So it's logistical. Then I have see that light rail all around the top. I can put on any video, any color, any musical on all those walls. And so it becomes Party time.
Yeah, I think I know I'm doing pretty poor job, being a timekeeper here, but it's just been so fun. Sorry about all these finer details, but I want to make sure we have maybe one or two questions from the audience side as well, because it's not every day we get those three, keynote worthy speakers all on the same stage. If there are any burning, okay, is there a mic runner kind of person? Okay.
Given artificial intelligence, robotics, biotechnology, biomimicry, climate change, all the changes occurring in our world with the onrush of technology, how do you see the future of landscape architecture and design? See it invigorated, threatened, or what?
I think that's a big enough question to really end this forum on. I was going to come on to your parting comments and thoughts as well. So shall we use that as a kind of nice note to end this thing on? And okay, excellent.
I'm going to start with
Okay. Shun-san,
Okay,
yes, ma'am.
those kind of technology will be very, very closely related to this, right? I mean, and throughout the social network system, and from small kids to the older or the senior people, everybody has been spending so much time looking at here and communicating with probably with someone. But sometimes AI means it's not a someone. It could be someone, of course, but we shouldn't forget about some people behind that kind of system making so much money, right? And to get out of those kind of, we'll be addicted quite a bit, everybody will be. So to get out of those kind of situation, I think what you have to do, or what we have to do, is to make a communication, communicate with not a person or not a human beings, but a nature. In that terms, I think preparing or kind of some kind of space or opportunity to communicate not with people but the nature, it is so important. So that is the kind of the future garden is all about. Of course, somebody will be very satisfied with virtual kind of experience of the monitors or those kind of things, but I really. So that's the kind of what we have to do as a landscape designers, and so we are not as a virtual designers or digital design. We use a lot of digital technology to project the image for the future, but it's just tool. So I think the distinguishing the tools and the reality is completely important things. And okay.
Thank you so much, Professor.
There is so much to talk about when it comes to AI and design. But well, first of all, I wish we would continue to talk about natural intelligence because we've got that in abundance, and that's been around for as long as humankind has been around. But it's both hopeful and it's also deeply problematic. As Miyagi Sensei said, it's a tool, and how we use it will determine how that will go. And I'm confident that the debate is active and alive. There's also a fundamental problem about AI is that all of this is basically a series of servers that are overheating and need to be cooled by water. And so I had a conversation with a really good friend of mine who's one of the principals at Field Operations over he's in the Philadelphia office. And I invited him to lecture for American Institute of Architects in Japan, where I was the president last year. And the question of AI in design processes came up, and I feel that I stand by this relatively naive and hopeful look, and that is if artificial intelligence, as it is when we know it, is likely here to stay, and maybe the buzz will sort of simmer in and integrate into the way we do things. If it's truly a level of intelligence that is beyond the capacity of the human mind, my hope is that it will help us solve the things that we couldn't on our own, those very problems. And that is resource scarcity, the efficiency of the use of those resources. And again, I will qualify that by saying that I am sometimes a kind of foolish optimist, because as a designer, it's my duty to dream, but in a way that it's done responsibly. So even in my office, we've got people who are die-hard using AI tools. And I'm thinking to myself, well, that's fine. Allow me to be curious. And then what are you doing about all of the different processes when you've entered the few prompts that are likely getting rid of gallons of water at the time that you're doing this? But most people don't think about that. And that's why we were talking about the visibility of these water acts. It's abstract for most of us. We already have it. He pointed out to the phone, we already are using these tools. Google is automatically spitting out things that are supposedly less comparable to other search AI assisted tools. So I find it worthwhile to do things responsibly. And when you use your acts, we are never going to be infallible. We're already taking in oxygen and breathing out carbon dioxide. So let's do things smartly, and let's do things with intention and with care. And I know that those are cliches by now, but it's important to tread carefully. There are many of us, and AI is just a tool, and let's try to use it wisely.
Thank you, Balázs.
Over to you, Kathryn.
I worked on the tidal basin in Washington, D.C. And the tidal basin is, we've got a huge problem with it. It's leaking. It's one of, it's got Jefferson Memorial, it's got Lincoln Memorial on the other side. It's got all the cherry blossoms that Japan gave. It's a huge draw. It's an environmental problem. And it's a huge environmental problem. I mean, the gates don't open anymore. The boats used to come in and then come down below there. And I was on part of a think tank of what you do and how do you actually let the flooding happen, right? How do you let the flooding happen that allows that water to raise up, and you move the cherry trees to higher ground, and you use different fill that's coming out of tunnels and things to create higher ground. So instead of fighting climate change, you work with it. The ability to do research on that was so much faster. All of a sudden I can find all the data on all the flooding on that river, without going to a library and spending 5 weeks, right? I mean, there's the accessibility to information, how you use it, what do you do with it? That's what's important.
That's right.
And for the things that are important to our planet and to our environment, there's a tool there. And so I couldn't have never done that research within that timeline and come up with those solutions within that timeline. And there's a tunnel being dug there. I've got a bunch of dirt coming out. I've got millions of cubic meters. They're going to transport that by truck someplace else. Why are they not using it? Why aren't they planning? So you've got all these different things happening on different people that are separate, and you have to have some more global thinking about the problem of the whole area.
Yeah.
And so
it's an opportunity, and you're
It's-
definitely
yes.
describing, very clear intent.
Yeah.
Because you're not just simply setting something forward and letting it AI itself, right? Because we're still people behind these sophisticated things. So that's really appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. With that, it's such a colossal of an idea and a conversation to really distill it down to just a few sentences, right? It's almost impossible to summarize what we talked about. Even we haven't actually unpacked a lot of things that were brought up in your presentation. So I think this is a conversation to continue going forward. But for now, I think the common thread for me is ancient wisdom. Wisdom can definitely flow with contemporary ideas like AI, like you said earlier. And then can lead us to maybe living with better harmony with nature. That idea altogether, I think, resonates with all of us. And I think that's why we're here, spending that precious Saturday afternoon with all of us. I don't know how many of you are actually garden members as of right now, but you are not. I would definitely encourage you to consider becoming a member, because that is really what keeps these wheels turning on these creative, innovative, inspiring conversations. And if you are already garden members, Thank you so much for being a huge part of what makes all this possible, yeah? So with that, we're going to go over to the reception for networking, okay? Thank you so very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.